Hello, my name's Tony Phillips. I'm author of several books on Fujifilm cameras, including on the X-T1, the X Pro 2, and I'm currently in the process of writing a book on the X-T2 at this time. I thought I'd do a quick unboxing and a quick look at the Fujifilm X-T2. Like all other Fujifilm cameras, the X-T2 comes packed in a really nice looking box. So inside are the manuals, a fairly chunky looking manual, and then down to the camera itself. Nice looking. So here we are. Open this. Extract the other box. This is the accessory set for the camera. Comes with a nice looking strap, more upmarket than previous straps. Nice sort of leather strap embossed with Fujifilm on it. Power adapter, battery, the flash. Now, in the manual, Fujifilm call this the supplied flash. This is the EF X8 flash. Alright, so that's what comes in the box. Before we go on and look at the camera though, let's just have a quick look at these batteries. There's been some talk that the new W126S has a higher capacity than the previous batteries, but here is a previous battery, and side by side both specifications are exactly the same. Obviously the batteries look quite similar. The new battery has a round dot on it to distinguish it from the older battery, which has an orange rectangle, and the point of the colour is to line up with this retaining pin, so you basically just line it up and drop it in. So let's have a quick look around the outside of the camera. There's the new articulating LCD, so this part of it works exactly the same as the X-T1, but on the side here there's a little lever which now allows you to do tall or portrait shots in either direction. It's not as effective as some articulating LCDs, but it's considerably better than none. This is the X-T1. And its articulating LCD moves like this. So that's it. While we've got the two cameras here, let's have a look at that. So here they are side by side. You can see that the X-T2 is very slightly bigger. It looks like it's bigger brother, if you like. In this case it's bigger younger brother. And very similar on the back, except obviously for the joystick. All the buttons are more or less in the same place. Same on the top plate, all the buttons and dials are more or less in the same place, except there is no movie function button here, and many people would have triggered that off accidentally quite a bit, I imagine. On the front, so there's a slight difference in size, as you can see. With the X-T1, this button here was a press and hold to turn. On the X-T2, it's a lock. So you press it to lock or unlock, and then when you put the ISO dial where you want it, you just press it and it locks again. Of course, you could operate it and leave it unlocked all the time if you wanted, which it turns quite easily, which means that you might actually find yourself having bumped it off the position, but it's very easy to operate. The same works for the shutter speed dial. The exposure compensation dial doesn't have a lock, but it's much stiffer. It also has a C position, which allows you to turn it to C, and then you get plus or minus 5 EV by turning the front command wheel. One of the things which you might appreciate if you're an X-T1 owner is that the four-way selector or the arrow keys are much more prominent in the X-T2 and much easier to use than the four-way arrow keys on the X-T1. There is no focus assist button on the X-T2 either, as there is with the X-T1. The Q menu button's been moved up to the focus assist button position, and the joystick takes the Q menu position. To get focus assist on this particular camera, you press the rear command wheel or command dial inwards. One of the things you might appreciate if you're using the camera professionally is that there are now 2 memory card slots, and they both take the high-speed UHS 2 memory cards. Also, the door which closes over the memory cards has a lock on it now, which none of the previous X cameras do. I've heard some people complain about this door and why did not Fuji put a lock on it, but it's actually quite tight. It locks quite snugly against the body, and I don't really have any problems with that particular door. You'll notice too inside of here that there is now an extra socket. One is for dedicated remote control and the other one is for microphone. There's a USB 3 port and a HDMI micro port. One of the things which is neat about the HDMI micro port is that now the camera can connect to HDMI all the time, which means that if you have your camera on a tripod in a studio, you can plug in the HDMI into this port and it will display on the monitor what the camera is seeing in real time. In previous X cameras, this only worked in the playback menu and it was predominantly used for playing back slideshows to a TV. This is a much more elegant solution for use in a studio or even for making a video like this. Another thing which has changed in the camera is the eyepiece. This is the X-T1 standard eyepiece and this is the X-T2 standard eyepiece. If I'd seen this on the X-T1, I would have said it was the long eye cup. So the X-T2 now comes standard with the long eye cup fitted. So let's look at the menu structure. This is the new menu structure that was introduced in the X Pro 2. I think it has a more logical structure to it. And if you look in the setup menu, you'll find that each one of these is exactly the same as a whole menu by itself. There's one thing here that might be of interest to you, and that is that you can use the joystick to navigate through the menus quite easily. And it makes it very fast and simple to actually make a setting or change something. Let's have a look at a couple of items in the menu structure. One of the things that I'd like to point out is that the flash functions have changed quite a bit, or at least the way that they're described. This is to allow for the new Fuji flash, which allows for high-speed sync and also wireless flash. This flash function setting now is quite different from what you're used to in previous X cameras. There's a section here which allows you to switch between the different modes. Notice here it says supplied flash. If I had a different Fujifilm flash on the top of the camera, then it would say something different. And if I take the flash off or even close it, then it says sync terminal and switches to manual because it recognizes that the PC sync port can only operate for manual flashes. But we'll go back to this. If you're in manual mode with this flash, and I don't really know why you would be, but this is how it works for other flashes too. You can go over here and change the power setting of the flash. Let's go back and change this to TTL. TTL is what would previously be called forced flash. The camera is going to fire the flash. TTL is the automatic mode for firing the flash. There is an auto TTL setting, but to get to the TTL settings you need to come down here and then scroll through them, and you have TTL, TTL slow, TTL auto, which is the same as auto before, and then back to TTL or forced flash or fill flash or whatever you want to call it. Over here there's the sync setting, which is front curtain and rear curtain, and in fact sometimes in this menu it calls it first curtain and second curtain, and other times it calls it rear and front, depending on which flash that you actually have attached to the camera at the time. The settings for the flash have changed quite a bit. It's still quite straightforward, but it's expressed in a completely different way from previous X cameras. Something else worth noting in the menus too is the new AFMF setting for AFC custom settings. You can select how you want AFC to track. There are 6 settings, although the 6th setting is one you can customize yourself. So the first setting is for multi-purpose, and there is a tracking sensitivity and a speed tracking sensitivity and a zone area switching, which in this case is auto. The second one is to ignore obstacles and continue to track a subject. So if anything comes between the lens and the subject, it attempts to ignore it based on how you have the tracking sensitivity and the speed tracking sensitivity set. The third setting is for accelerating and decelerating subjects, again moving more or less across the image. The fourth area is for suddenly appearing subjects. Actually, this is probably maybe the best one for general use, but it's worth you experimenting and seeing. And the fifth one is for erratically moving, accelerating and decelerating subjects, which could be moving toward or away from the camera or across the image. So it's expecting it to be potentially moving in any direction. The sixth is for a custom setting, and you can basically highlight this and then use the front command wheel or command dial. And then if you want to see what that looks like, this is what it's expecting. Sets the switching sensitivity of the focus frame in the zone area to track according to the right-hand subject. And the same here, so if we switch to speed tracking sensitivity, how steady or accelerating, decelerating is it? And if we select for 2 here, you can see that that's much faster. And then this is selecting for 0. Let's talk briefly about the joystick. The obvious purpose of the joystick is to be able to move it and shift to a new focus position. When you do, this overlay pops onto the screen temporarily. As you can see, it's possible for you to select each of the rule of thirds primary positions and to have autofocus work for you. If you press the function button, you get to see all of the points. The large rectangles represent the PDAF area, and the smaller rectangles are contrast detect points rather than phase detect points. So the focus will be less reliable and slower in these locations and more reliable and faster in these locations. If you want to center the focus frame, just press the joystick. Well, there we go. That's a quick look at the new Fujifilm X-T2. You can see that it's quite similar to the X-T1. It's slightly larger. I'm sure by now that you've read all the specifications and you understand that it's a 24 megapixel sensor as opposed to a 16 megapixel sensor, and that it has a much faster processor. So I won't go through all those specifications for you. I just thought that this would be nice to have a quick look at a commercially boxed Fujifilm X-T2 and to see it alongside of the X-T1. Thank you.